News Talk 1400 KFRU is proud to present the KFRU Heritage Series. Listen each Sunday at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. It's a one-hour perspective on the events and the people whose lives have contributed to the heritage of Boone County. The KFRU Heritage Series from News Talk 1400 KFRU.
We have covered all kinds of topics on the Heritage Show on News Talk 1400 KFRU. Not a lot of sports topics. As a matter of fact, I can't remember if we've done a sports topic yet. Maybe touched upon it briefly, but today we'll talk sports, local sports, and probably some names of people that you know. Some of them may be related to you, or you may be those people who we'll talk about with football particularly on our mind, with two who have been a part of the scene of football here for quite some time. John Henage, it's good to see you. How are you?
Just fine. And yourself?
I'm doing all right. John Henage, who coached, I think of you most as the football coach at Rockbridge High School. You were that for how many years?
21.
21 years. Beginning when and ending when?
77, the season of 77, and then 98 was the last season.
Now, you've done other things. Did you coach anything else at Rockbridge when you were there?
Coach golf.
Yeah.
And at one time a stint of basketball. And
really? Now, I did not know that you coached boys basketball at Rockbridge. Was that early on?
We had a problem with a coach that left in the middle of the season and left Coach Scanlon short. And he had a couple JV games that needed to be played and he was somewhere else at another with the varsity, and so I filled in.
How about that? How was your record?
I'm undefeated.
Retired undefeated. Not many people say that. Dan Devine Jr. here is here also, and I asked him to both come because, Dan, you worked with Coach Henage for quite some time.
I worked with Coach Henage for too many years now. I worked with him for 19 out of those 21 years.
We're going to focus on Rockbridge sports, and some people will say, how about Hickman? Don't slight them. We're not, and we hope to have some Hickman people on. Dan has given me a couple of names of people that we might track down, but, I mean, you spent some of your time at Hickman as a student.
I did. I played football, and I was a student at Hickman High School, and so I can relate a little bit to that.
And you now coach Hickman baseball.
Now I'm coaching Hickman baseball.
Did you ever coach anything else at Hickman?
This is my first opportunity to coach at Hickman, and I'm enjoying wearing the purple.
But you're not undefeated.
We're not undefeated, but I am really liking our baseball team this year.
I want to get back to high school sports in a moment, but everybody will know you with your connection to this community through your father. Help people understand when you did live here, because, I mean, there were times when you went away to college, but there are other things that your dad was doing. But from your earliest memories, what's been the connection to this community through your father and your family?
My father took the Missouri football job in his first season was 1958, and so the family moved there from Phoenix, Arizona, from Tempe and Arizona State, and we came to beautiful Columbia, Missouri.
But at that point in time, you would have been young enough not to be bothered by that much.
No, you didn't worry about that. I was just going into kindergarten, and so I grew up in Columbia. We were here for 13 years, and then just about my senior year of high school is when he went to Green Bay, and then I went away to college. And after college, I started applying for teaching and coaching positions, and they had an opening in Columbia, Missouri, and so I took that. And a year later, a guy walked into my summer school class, and I didn't know who he was, and he wanted to know if I would help him coach Rockbridge football. And I said, sure, why not? Rockbridge
at that point in time was how old, Coach Henage?
It was going in our fourth year.
Fourth year.
Yes.
And that was your first year of coaching?
No, I had coached at Fulton for 3 years.
Well, I meant at Rockbridge, but I was going to
first year at Rockbridge. I'd coached at Fulton for 3, and then St. Joe Central for 3, and 6 years at Orchard Farm in St. Charles.
So where are you from originally?
Fulton. Grew up in Fulton.
And I wanted to ask Coach Henage this also. You've had connections with MU football because for a long time you've been up in the press box running certain things up there.
When I was a senior in high school, the junior high coach at Fulton was the person that ran the chain crew, and they were a man short one game, and they asked me if I'd come along and be the clip person, and I was a clip person, and then I stayed with it. Even when I was in college, I'd come back for the Missouri games, and I ran the drag box, the start of the drive box, the down box, the chains. I did everything, and then they started the 25-second clock. And the first year, the official did it on the field, and then they needed somebody on the chain to hold on to the controls and be the controller, so I did that. And they had some malfunctions with the clock that it would reset in the middle of a play, and found out it was on the same frequency as the highway patrol because it was remote control then. And it was on that was before the south end was built, and they always had 2 highway patrol cars there, one on each side. Then they hardwired to the press box, and I had been there. And this about 3 or 4 years ago, the Big 12 took over operations, and they asked the clock operators if they wanted to continue to do it, but they wouldn't do it for the home conference games. It'd be a rare occurrence. And I was able to do that, and so for 51 years I've been.
That's amazing. You were how old when you did the first chain game?
When I was a senior in high school.
You got to be one of the youngest ones to do that at a college football game, a major college
well,
football game.
It was a little looser back then than it is now.
So when you talk about a drag box and stuff like that, for people who may not know what that's referring to, like me, I'm not sure what the drag. Are you talking about the 10-yard?
No, well, they have the down box on the chain side, and on the opposite side of the field they have what they call the drag box, because it stays in spot in case there's a penalty, and then it moves right before the play starts.
Yeah.
And so I was that person too.
Do you remember? I don't know what you would remember from that first game or those first years, because
it was just exciting being on the field with the players. I mean, here I was a senior, and it was just amazing to, and you at that time, Missouri sat on the opposite side, which they do now, and so we were on the visiting team's bench, and it switched, but you just got to see a lot of football up close. I got to shake Bear Bryant's hand, and seen some famous coaches, Dan's dad, and so forth.
I know what people who are listening want me to ask right now. Did you ever get hit and rolled by any player who came at you? And
I was alert.
People who have been down at the side of a field talk about how much faster things are happening down there than it seems like when you're up in the bleachers. Would you say that's true?
Well, yeah, because you see all the commotion going on the bench area that a lot of people don't relate to. And,
players are faster too. I mean,
they're faster and they're bigger, and you have to watch what you're doing out there.
All right, so Dan, you were on the sideline.
I was on the opposite sideline. I was on the sideline where the Missouri bench was, and I was the ball boy. And so I had many of those same experiences, staying up with the play, and then when a ball needed to be changed out, I would be the person that would do that.
Did they do it as often back in those days as they do now?
No, they didn't. And you can watch a baseball game today, and a baseball gets one little piece of dirt on it, and they're throwing it out, and they pretty much change footballs now, pretty much almost every play, and they just want to keep it dry, in case something has gotten on it, and they don't want it to interfere.
Do they? Don't they? Or is this high school now where they change footballs? What's the deal about changing footballs to the preference of whoever has got the ball at that point in time?
Well, in football, as a team, you get to choose what type of football you want to play with. And I know Coach Hennig oftentimes would spend, we would have discussions about what type. It's the shape of the football, whether it's better for passing or running, and so we would have discussions about what was a better ball, and then that would be the ball that we would use. And then when you're on offense, you get to use it. Also, when you're kicking, you get to use it. And so one year, a great story that we have is Coach Hennig gets this ball from, and I don't know who you got it from, but it was some, but it had green stripes on it. And so we used it in practice just because it, you had gotten it promotionally or something, and we were just playing around with it. And we noticed the kids had a hard time catching it, so that became the ball that we would use on kickoffs because
nobody could field it.
because of the stripe on there, it just made it difficult to catch. So that ball, I think we used it for maybe 3 years or something.
Same ball.
It was old and tattered, and it was barely holding together.
Do the officials get to check these balls before the game starts?
And the only rule is that they have to have the right air pressure in them.
And they had to be certified by the...
And certified, yeah. And they have no rules on the wear or tear of it. And so we used that ball for quite a while.
Oh, gosh. So that's been going on for a long time. See, I thought that had only started kind of recently when the balls... I guess I wasn't paying enough attention. I got to be a ball boy when I was a little kid. They never changed the ball. I could stand there game after game after game. I never had to give a ball, even after extra points. There would be an official behind the goalpost that would catch a ball and I'd go running out there, and he'd wave me off, and they'd keep the ball the whole time.
Back in those days, that's how
now
we
they
used
have ball
to do it.
boys on both sides of the fields and everything.
Yeah.
Did you know John Henage at that point in time? Did you know he was over there doing anything?
I did not know John Henage was over there doing that, and I'm sure if I had, we would have gone over and given high fives.
I heard you, Coach Henage, describe when they went to they started timing in between plays differently in college. And when you talked about they asked a few years ago if you'd be willing to travel to go to other Big 12 scenes to run the clock. It really is. What are you watching for now? I know this is getting away from heritage, which we're talking about on this program, but I heard you describe, it's kind of a talent, and it's tough to know the right way to start that. It's 40 seconds, right?
You're watching the referee is where the person you watch, but then when the ball is snapped, you watch the ball, and the person closest to the ball or the official that raises their hand. When they raise their hand, that's when you start the 40-second clock. You don't, just because the ball is thrown out of bounds, you don't start the clock until the official raises his hand, because the ball has to hit something out of bounds for it to be out of bounds. And you have 40 seconds or 25, and you have criteria that you use which one to start with, and you really are concentrating on the officials quite a bit.
You don't get to enjoy the game very much.
People say you see a lot of the game. Well, you do see the game, but you're really concentrating on your position so you don't mess up, and you don't want to take away from either team. You want to be as fair as you can.
I'm going to guess that there are a lot of fans that are pretty good football fans who don't realize that that's what's happening. It's no longer set the ball down, start the play clock, wind the play clock. This is, if they watch, that clock starts pretty quickly as soon as the play's over. It's meant to speed up the game some.
Yeah, some officials are slower to wind the clock than other officials, and this way it gets more consistent throughout the you have 25 or 40 seconds after the ball's, and then in some cases it's 25 seconds.
Yeah.
And even on kickoffs, your time for a kickoff for 25 seconds after the official blows his whistle and gives a signal.
We'll have a break here in about a minute and a half. I'll come back to Dan for just the final thoughts on this, on your experiences at Memorial Stadium and with the whole atmosphere of football there. Do you have any other thoughts of things that you got to do and what it meant to be the coach's son and to get to be able to do some of the things you got to do?
When you're doing something, you don't realize, how big it really is. But, going back and looking at the 13 years being here at Missouri, just saw some unbelievable games, being in the locker room and being around the players at that time. As I look back on that was, just fantastic memories and a great experience.
I'm not going to ask you to pick out the ones that were the biggest jerks to you, but I'm curious as to, you may not have any memories of any of those, but who sticks out in your mind as being a good guy that had time at least to maybe give you a clap on the back or something like that?
It's really amazing, and I know Coach Henage will say this, whenever there's little kids around, football players just like them, and they just gravitate towards them, and so that I was just treated really, really well. I know Roger Worley was somebody that sticks out. Johnny Rowland, Francis Pay. We're all, they just football players like little kids that are hanging around there, and they just kind of take you under their wing, and
especially when they're the coach's son. Also,
when they're the coach's son, it doesn't hurt anything.
Well.
Yeah,
we're doing the Heritage Series with John Henage and Dan Devine Jr. This is News Talk 1400 KFRU.
the KFRU Heritage Series.
We're talking about a particular slice of sports in Columbia on our Heritage program this morning with former Rockbridge football coach, head coach John Hennig, and also Dan Devine Jr., who was also the head coach at Rockbridge for a year. I think that's the first time I met you, when I had to interview you.
I'm sorry, that's the first time.
You know, John Hennig was saying in the first segment how he got pushed into being a basketball coach for a while with some things that happened untimely. I think you helped out Rockbridge very nicely in a year when they needed somebody at the last minute.
Well, I coached with Coach Hennig for 19 years, and so that, Rockbridge was a place that I had called home for a very long time. And as time had gone on, I had changed some priorities as far as my teaching responsibilities, and so I wanted to spend more time in the classroom. And at that time, football was becoming much more of a year-round sport, as many of the sports are today, and that's a big change in sports right now. And so I'd kind of stepped away from that, but in 2000, Rockbridge had some bad luck in hiring a football coach, and late in the school year, they didn't have one, and so they asked me, and I said, yeah, I'll do that.
So you. Don't let me forget to ask you about how you coached a junior high team and you caused a change in the rules because of the way that you coached. I remember you've told me this, I think, twice on our trips to football games. But you taught throughout the time there. Where did you teach, and what did you teach, and for how long?
I taught at Jefferson Junior High School, and I taught freshman government class, and taught that for 32 years. And
is that where you went to junior high?
No, I was a West Junior Viking, and one of the things that I remember is the worst day of my professional career in teaching was the day I found out that I had to teach at Jeff Junior because being a Viking, that was the worst place in the world that you could go to. But
you changed your mind.
The people there were so unbelievable, and it's like that anywhere you go. It's the people that you work with, and so I worked with some great people at Jeff Jr. and then with Coach Hennig at Rockbridge. It was a niche that I found, and as much as anything, it's the people that you get to associate with.
Now, John Hennig, when you were with the school district, in addition to coaching, where did you teach, or what were your role, your real full-time job?
Well, I was a PE instructor, and then also I was the building athletic director after I'd been there for a couple of years, and also coached, like I mentioned, golf. So I kept busy.
So your first year as head coach at Rockbridge for football was what year again?
1977.
And when did the state championships come?
They came in 1975 and 77.
So right before you got there.
The first year, Dan and I coached together. We had a state championship team that we won on Faroe Field, 7-6
against
Camdenton.
And you can still remember the scoring of that game, I'm sure.
Second play of the game.
Second play of the game.
Second play, well, not of the game, but the second play that we had the ball. We ran an option play. Mark Lewis was the quarterback. He faked the pitch and kept the ball and run it up right down the sideline and going towards the north end of the stadium and scored. It happened to be at Faroe Field. Mm-hmm. And then he also was the person that kicked the extra points for us, and he made the extra point. And then late in the game, with about 6 minutes and 36 seconds left, Camdenton scores, and we had an outstanding nose guard that was always seemed to come up with a big play named Danny Sapp that blocked their extra point try. They had the All-State kicker for the whole. It was the first team All-State, and we blocked that extra point, and we ran the next kickoff back, but it was called back because of a penalty. Kenny Turner did that, and then we held on and won that ball game. And probably it was the coldest game that I have ever coached.
Really?
The weather
would have been 3 or so weeks
into
November.
It was like minus
probably.
15.
Minus 15, but you have shorts on?
Had shorts on. Had shorts on underneath sweats.
Short thing.
You guys always wear shorts, though. I mean, I thought Dan told me he always wore shorts on the sideline. But you guys always seem to want to wear shorts as coaches down there. Show how tough you were.
We were a little bit superstitious.
What was the crowd like?
We had about 10,000 people there
on a cold day like that.
Very cold day. It was the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and the Thanksgiving night, Hap Whitney was the associate athletic director at MU and in charge of field of it. And he told us he might call us if the weather was supposed to rain to put the tarp on the field, get the players to help put the tarp on the field.
Wow.
And Thanksgiving evening, we had to put that tarp on the field, and they had trouble getting the tarp off the next day because it had frozen.
How many classes were there of football at that time?
There were 4 classes.
And you were in
3A.
3A.
We were around 770 students at the time.
So how many other times were you close or played close to a state championship?
We had 2 that we were in the finals, and another one that we had several that were in the semifinals.
2.
But the one that sticks out is we were at a Class 4 team, which is the largest class. The cutoff point was 1,000 students. We had 1,001 students that year,
yeah.
And we lost to Rockhurst 7-3. That was the first game we ever lost at Rockbridge Field. And it was on the last minute and a half. They ran a long pass play and that was the only time they got across our 50-yard line.
Wow. And that was in what year?
It was in 81.
81. Now, what was your responsibility, Dan, for the football teams that Coach Hennig did? You were defense or offense?
Well, at that time, I don't know how many coaches we were allowed to have, but it was very few, maybe 4 or 5 coaches. So there was
total.
Yeah, and that was for sophomore and JV teams.
Wow.
And so there was not an offense or a defensive coach. You coached everything, and I coached offensive line and was defensive coordinator.
Oh, really? So you went both sides on that. I was just trying to think if Coach Hennig if after one of these games he walked into the dressing room and said, "You know what? If you just done this differently."
Oh, he would do that all the time.
Go ahead.
If they scored too many points, it was the defense, and if we didn't score enough, it was the offensive line not blocking.
But you know what? People who know Rockbridge football for a long time, I think they give a lot of trouble to Coach Hennig. You like the low-scoring games. You know what? If it's 7-6, 7-3, who's complaining as long as you get the 7?
We tried to control the clock and the ball.
So did you keep stats back then of time of possession? Was it sophisticated enough to have those kinds of stats at that point in time?
No, we just wanted to have more points on the scoreboard after the game and have the control of the game.
Some of the names of some of the people, and they don't have to be people who are players who went on and started in college or anything like that, but just how well do the names stick in your mind? I mean, you mentioned 3 or 4 in the story about the state championship.
You remember most all the players. If you don't remember the name, you remember the face. And I know, 30, 40 years difference, and the faces change and the bodies change, and you try to remember them, but and because all the kids were important, not just the ones that started. And we had we tried to teach the kids that every one of them was important, that if they didn't do well in practice, we wouldn't do well in the game, no matter who was out there, and they all always had to be ready. We had a lot of kids come through.
You still see their names now occasionally of doing things?
Oh, yeah. In fact, one of our players lost his mother or his father this past week, and I went to the funeral or the visitation, and it was you always, and sometimes you get a surprise wedding invitation from somebody, and you. So I try to make an effort to go to those things because they gave time for us.
And Matt Ross, was a manager.
Yeah, even a manager. We went.
They would be just so important to the program too, and you just really, lots of names. That you name, and I mean, in fact, Terry Whitney and Ray Nunley both played on that first team with us, and both of them coached with us, and they stuck with the program. In fact, Terry was I think total for about 16, 17 years with us. And
wasn't
Terry's coaching baseball at Hickman
with you.
A lot of names stick around in this community. John Hennig and Dan Devine Jr. are our guests. Okay, give us a flavor. I'll ask Dan this question of a John Henage pregame pep talk.
You don't want me to put everybody to sleep.
That's what I was wondering, because he seems to be even keel, and he doesn't seem to have. It's like what I was doing an interview with a guy that had talked to a lot of Major League Baseball players and about their fathers and advice that they'd gotten from their fathers, and a lot of them said, "I always heard, don't get too high, don't get too low," and that's where you want to shoot for.
Well, Coach Henage, the thing that I probably learned the most from him was just game preparation started that first day of practice on Monday. And, if you wanted to play well on Friday night, you had to prepare and you had to practice well. And so I think a lot of people forget how important that is. They think you can just come in and all of a sudden give them one fiery speech and they're going to go out and play well. That preparation started on Monday. Coach Henage, but on game days, Coach Henage would have another, he would turn it up another volume. And you can ask people who would hang around Coach Henage, and they would say, "Okay, you want to stay away from the coach today because he's pretty tight." And I think maybe the one pregame speech I remember the most is Chillicothe in '77, and so we're playing up there, and this is our first year, and we're just kind of getting to know the.
And Chillicothe was tough. I mean,
Chillicothe,
who was the guy up there? I mean, because
Bob Fairchild.
Oh, Fairchild. Oh my gosh.
And he'd have been state champion two or three times.
Yeah. So, just to give you an idea of how important the Chillicothe game is, and how he would focus on, you get ready on Monday. The Friday night, I don't remember who we played on the Friday night that week before. As soon as that game was over, he had the Chillicothe game film out, and we were watching Chillicothe game film Friday night after the game. Now, he would never do that before because he would focus on that game.
Was that coaching staff
and
players?
No, just
not the players
just
yet.
the coaching staff. But, I mean, we started getting ready for Chillicothe the minute the previous Friday night game was over. So
now
the importance of that game was already – well, so we get up there, and Coach Henage, who is known for his – wide open style.
Oh yeah, wide open style. How many passes did you average a game? Did you ask your quarterback to throw a game?
Well, he didn't ask his quarterback to throw the first pass of the game. The first pass of the game was a halfback pass back to the quarterback, and we had worked on this play all week long, and so. We come in and the guys are fired up because we've been looking forward to this game, and we'd been ready for it, and we'd been practicing this play, and so we get there and we're back in the locker room after warming up, and we're getting ready to go back out, and the lights in the stadium go out. So there was like 25 minute delay that we're just sitting in the locker room. And all Coach Henage can say is, what we're going to run. You know what we're going to run on the first play. You know what we're going to run. He won't say what we're going to run, but we're going to run the halfback pass back to Kenny Turner throwing to Mark Lewis, and everybody knows that. But he won't say that we're going to run. You know what we're going to run. So we got 25 minutes of, what we're going to run. So when we came out of the locker room, those guys were fit to be tied, and I don't know what the score was, but we beat Chillicothe pretty handily.
And that pass
night.
Worked?
Oh, yeah. They went for a touchdown.
First play of the game,
we went for a touchdown.
Ran a touchdown. And the thing was, Chillicothe had Mark Lewis covered, and he was just able to outrun him, and Kenny made a great
Kenny
pass.
Makes just unbelievable pass.
And we score, and then we also scored on a blocked punt game. Mm-hmm. And Ray Nunley pushed Kenny Turner out of the way so he could recover the fumble in the end zone for the touchdown. And Kenny always, when they see each other and you talk to them, they always bring that. Kenny always brings that up, that Ray just pushed him out of the way so he could get a touchdown.
I bet he does.
And Coach Henage was mentioning our nose guard, Danny Sapp, who will eventually end up blocking the extra point to give us the state championship. He is 5'5", maybe 135 pounds, playing nose guard in high school football. So anyway, and I'm coaching the defense, and he comes over to me early in the game and says, "Coach, their center is really slow snapping, and I can knock the ball out of his hand." I said, "Well, what?" He goes, "When he starts to move the ball, I can just knock it out of his hands. He's so slow." I said, "Well, okay." So next time out, he goes out and he does. Center snaps the ball. He reaches up and knocks the ball out of his hand, and we recover the fumble.
They changed centers after that.
He snapped it. He started snapping it quicker. But those are the fun things that you remember.
Did you all drive the buses?
Yes, we did. We drove the buses
successfully. Always.
I think
Coach Devine. I think it was Bob Noki was coaching with us at the time, and we were at Chillicothe again.
Another time, yeah.
And they told him that he had enough fuel to get there and get back. And when we were coming back about midnight at Carrollton, Coach Devine's on that bus with Coach Noki, and their bus stops, and so we have to pile all the equipment that we'd thrown in both buses. We put all the equipment on the bus that ran out of gas, and Coach Devine, Coach Noki find somebody to get the gas, and we drive the kids on back. So
pre-cell phones, so it's not
and there was nothing open. There was like a sheriff, county sheriff or somebody just pulls over, and he knows some guy that might have some gas, and so we got to call this guy, and we ride in and we get some gas in there and finally get it filled up. And
so you get back to Columbia in about time when Coach Hennig is saying, "Well, we got to start preparing for next week."
We got to start preparing for next week. Actually, I think we got back just in time. At that time, you didn't have videotape. We had to get the film developed, and so we had a place that we had to take the film over Saturday morning so we could get it developed to watch the game film. I think I made it back just in time to go take the game film over.
You were stringing up, like 8mm or 6, whatever the millimeter was.
Yeah. 16 millimeter.
16 millimeter film.
All right, we got to take a break. We'll come back and do our final segment with the coaches after this. This is the Heritage Show on KFRU.
The KFRU Heritage Series.
We're talking with football coaches John Hennig and Dan Devine Jr. and their time at Rockridge and other things, and some of the stories go along with that. I don't think people understand. I've got friends who played football, and I've traveled with Dan a lot, and I've worked with Coach Hennig at a few games. As a matter of fact, we ought to talk about that first game that you did on radio. I think we went up to Moberly. Was that right?
It's going to be a real close game. It ended up being 69-0 or something like that.
That really breaks you in well, though. If you can handle a 69-0 blowout on a football broadcast, then you can do most anything.
A lot of dead airtime, I guess you'd say.
Especially in a press box where you're like shoulder to shoulder with all the Moberly clock people and their radio people, and so it's like you don't want to say too much that would get them angry. But anyway, I always appreciated also your emphasis on, and Dan alluded to this earlier in the program, you coached back in a time where I know it was important to you when I first met you and started doing interviews with you about the football team, about encouraging guys to try other sports and do other things.
I still believe that. And even in this day of specialization, and I've noticed that doctors, orthopedic doctors, have lately come out saying that many of the knees and injuries that they have are because of continued repetition doing the same thing over and over and not getting a chance to develop the other muscles. So I really believe that there's something to that, because when we played, kids played 3 sports. Mm-hmm. And in high school, your high school is such a short period of your life, and it's such an intense period of life when kids' emotions are from one end to the other end of the scale, and they're very intense, and it's a place they remember most of their lives, and they never get to go do that again. So I always tell them, you only get one chance at high school, so make the most of it and go out for, if it's not a sport, if it's another club or another activity that you like, because you'll never have that opportunity again.
Is it I would like to think, and you can tell me this is true or false, that if you are talented enough to play at the next level in any sport, that's going to show, whether you only focus on that sport during the whole year or not. Is that true or false?
I think that's true.
I would say in most cases it is, and every once in a while there will be a case where a kid maybe doesn't have as much natural talent, and he just develops the talent he does have. you go back to people are good at what they like to do, and if you like to do more than one thing, you really need to go out and do it, and don't just limit yourself to that one thing because everybody says you need to do it.
Yeah, Coach Hennig, you were talking about how, I'm gonna lose my train of thought here. I'm going to probably have to shelve that one and come back to that in a moment if I can think. But I was thinking about the working out when you looked at how you coached when you started at Rockbridge, and then how coaching is done now. Number of coaches, scouting that's being done, overall workout and dedication to weightlifting and everything else. How much has changed?
It's changed quite a bit, and a lot of players are one-sport athletes now, and I think kids get so wrapped up that if they, in just one sport, that, like I said, they miss an opportunity to do other things and meet other people. The weightlifting was even there when Dan and I were there, but it wasn't a mandatory thing. It was here it is. If you want to do it, do it. We prefer that you do it. We'd rather see you go out for basketball or wrestling in the winter, than the weight lift. But if you want to keep in shape and get conditioning was a big factor for us. We were not the very first game that I ever coached was against Chaminade, and we were a small team. Ray Nunley was our biggest player, and he weighed right at 200 pounds, I think.
Wow.
And but we were fast, and we were quick, and we were smart. And we played Chaminade, and it was 105, and it was a Saturday afternoon, and it was very humid. Their field was right next to a creek, and it was a Saturday afternoon, and it was extremely humid. And Chaminade was very big and very talented team. In fact, their smallest guy was about Ray Nunley's size, and they ran a single wing at the time and just came at you. And we ran the option, inside and outside veer, and I can remember going at halftime. We didn't even go inside because it was so hot. We just went over under some trees and sat down. And I'm thinking, what do I say to these guys? We're down 14-0, and we were fortunate that we had a play that they were punting the ball, and all the players were standing away from Coach Devine and I at the other end of the bench, and we were up at one end, and the kids were all at the other except for one young man, and he was our third-string quarterback, and our defensive tackle comes off the field. He's got cramps in his legs, and we grab Bill Firking was who it was, and we grabbed Bill and say, go in there, and he says, well, I don't know what to do. He says, ask the guy next to you, and ask Jeff Early. And he runs in and he asks Jeff, and Jeff says, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, let alone what you're supposed to do. So just go in and block the thing. And Bill went in and he blocked the punt. We score. We go for 2 points on our first score. And Rob Shaw, his father was farmer superintendent, catches the extra point. And then it's 8-14. And then later on we score. And when we score, the person that holds the holder for the ball comes in the end zone, and he can't get up, and he's both legs that got cramps in them. And a young man, Daryl Turner. He came in, Daryl Lewis, right, said, Coach, I can hold it. I do it for Mark every day before practice. Okay. And he kicks it, and Mark Lewis kicks the extra point, and the ball clears the bar about 6 inches.
No, it didn't clear it. It hit the bar and bounced over. It hit the crossbar and bounced over.
And it was not only the crossbar but the upright. It could have hit the crossbar and the upright.
And it hit both.
And we win 15-14. And before that, I had pushed conditioning extremely hard, and the coach that was here before me, Coach Davies, he thought you got the conditioning through the drills and what you do, and didn't push it like we did. And the kids didn't take too kindly. They'd lost the coach that had won the state championship for them and moved on. And these seniors were all sophomores that when Coach Davies was there, and I had a different way, a different philosophy about conditioning, and they didn't really buy into it too well. But after we won that ball game, I think I could have walked on water and they would have believed it because they bought into the conditioning. And we win that ball game 15-14, and we end up winning the state championship that year.
What was the worst year you had?
We were 1-9 or
1-8.
1-8
because
that's right. We only had 9
Richard
games
would always tell you 1-9, and you'd have to correct him 1-8.
That's right. We were 1-8 one year. We had one of those years that I think that was the year that the quarterback that was going to score one game Mexico, and he dives across what he thought was the end line, but it was a 5-yard line. And but we had one of those years, and we played not bad. We didn't score more points than the other. One of the best teams we had was 3-6. It was,
wow.
And we almost won the district championship in overtime that year. And but I think of the most that year we lost every game less than 5 points. Wow. That we lost by less than 5.
But the thing is, you remember those players also. I mean, every year is like a special chapter.
Well, the 3-6 team, the quarterback was Brian Foster, and right now he's in the Air Force. I think it's either Major or Colonel Alston or Foster, and he's a pilot, jet pilot, and he went to Michigan as a walk-on, and he got the outstanding walk-on award at Michigan on his senior year. He could have had another year eligibility and played, and he declined and joined because he is in Marine pilot training and took that instead.
Wow. Well, we've run out of time, so if we do these programs long enough, we'll have you back and we'll tell more stories. I want Dan to explain how he finally got because of his shenanigans, he got a rule change where they stop the clock now after penalties because he was just running out of game because he kept getting the penalty over and over and over again, knowing that eventually he had plenty of field left and the clock would run out before he ran out of field. That was smart, but changed the game on you.
And they did. And the best example that we did that was back again at Chillicothe.
Oh, my goodness. Well, good for them. The Hornets needed that. John Hennig and Dan Devine, Jr., thanks for joining us. We appreciated this.
Thank you.
That's the Heritage Program on News Talk 1400 KFRU.
You've been listening to the KFRU Heritage Series, celebrating our history and heritage of Columbia and Boone County. Listen each Sunday at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. The KFRU Heritage Series. News Talk 1400 KFRU. Columbia. 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 Columbia.